Kimi Antonelli had just put Mercedes on top of second practice at Spa, after a dramatic setup turnaround that changed the entire mood inside the team. And suddenly, the biggest question was no longer whether Max Verstappen had the speed to fight for pole. It was whether Red Bull could control the one weapon every driver wanted on this circuit: the toe. At Spa, a perfectly timed slipstream can unlock crucial speed on the straights. But get the timing wrong, catch traffic, or leave the garage a few seconds too late, and the same strategy can destroy the lap before it truly begins. Antonelli had already shown that Mercedes was dangerous. Russell's side of the garage still had an unresolved problem. And Red Bull now faced a decision that could either place Verstappen at the front, or leave him exposed when the pressure reached its highest point. Because this was not just a fight between two fast cars. It was a fight over timing, trust, and one desperate qualifying gamble that had no room for error. Subscribe to the channel. Before qualifying even began, the pressure had already shifted. Friday practice had given Red Bull two very different pictures. In the first session, Max Verstappen was fastest. His lap was 1 minute, 47.070 seconds, enough to place him ahead of both Ferraris. More importantly, the car appeared stable with Red Bull's conventional rear wing back on the machine. That mattered. Red Bull had removed its experimental rotating wing after two frightening high-speed failures. One happened in Austria. Another followed at Silverstone. At Spa, where the cars spend so much time at full speed, the team could not afford another failure. So Red Bull chose safety. But safety came with a price. The older wing gave Verstappen confidence through the fast corners, yet it also raised a difficult question. Would the car still be quick enough on Spa's long straights when qualifying arrived? At first, Verstappen's position at the top suggested the answer was yes. Then the second practice session changed everything. Mercedes transformed its car between the two sessions. Kimi Antonelli produced a lap of 1 minute, 45.944 seconds on his first run with the soft tires. Nobody beat it. Lando Norris finished 190 thousandths of a second behind him. Verstappen was third, 472 thousandths away. That gap was not enormous. But at Spa, the reason behind the gap can matter more than the number itself. This circuit is a strange balance between courage and efficiency. The car needs enough downforce to remain stable through the fast corners. Downforce is the force that pushes the car toward the track, helping the tires grip. But more downforce usually creates more resistance on the straights. Think of running while holding an open umbrella behind you. The umbrella gives you control in one situation, but it also pulls you backward. That was Red Bull's problem. They needed Verstappen to feel secure through the dangerous sections. But they also needed enough straight-line speed to challenge Mercedes over one qualifying lap. And Antonelli had just exposed how narrow that balance could be. Mercedes had struggled earlier in the day. Antonelli was only 6th in the first session, while George Russell was 8th. The team admitted it had expected more grip than the circuit actually provided. Between sessions, Mercedes corrected the setup. The result was immediate. Antonelli went from being more than half a second away from the fastest time to leading the entire field. That was not a small improvement. It was a warning. Red Bull could no longer assume that Verstappen's early pace represented the true order. Mercedes had found something, and they had found it quickly. But that was only one part of the threat. Russell remained more than 1 second behind Antonelli in the second session, even after his earlier power unit problem had been addressed. That difference suggested Mercedes had not solved everything. The car was fast. Antonelli was fast. But the performance was not yet equal across both sides of the garage. And that created a dangerous mystery for Red Bull. Was Antonelli's lap a perfect moment that would be difficult to repeat? Or had Mercedes discovered a genuine advantage that would become even stronger in qualifying? Red Bull had no comfortable answer. They only had the data from Friday, the condition of their own car, and the knowledge that Spa rewards drivers who can find speed in a straight line. That is where the idea of a toe becomes so important. A toe happens when one car follows another along a straight. The leading car pushes a hole through the air. The following car enters that disturbed air and faces less resistance. It is like riding a bicycle behind someone on a windy road. The rider in front does more work. The rider behind can move faster with less effort. At Spa, that effect can be valuable because the full throttle sections are so long. But the toe is not free speed. It has to be timed almost perfectly. Too far behind, and the benefit disappears. Too close, and the following driver can lose grip when the track turns. The car ahead can also slow unexpectedly, change its preparation, or force the driver behind into a bad position. So a toe strategy is not simply about finding another car. It is about finding the right car, at the right distance, at exactly the right moment. And this is where Red Bull's situation became more uncomfortable. Verstappen needed help on the straights, but he could not afford to sacrifice the high-speed corners. He needed space to prepare his tires, but he also needed another car close enough to provide the slipstream. He needed to begin his flying lap before the clock expired, but leaving too early could place him on a slower track. Every solution created another risk. Meanwhile, Antonelli had already shown that Mercedes could produce speed without waiting for the perfect story to unfold around it. His fastest lap arrived early in the second session. He placed the time on the board, and nobody removed it. That gave Mercedes something Red Bull did not have. Proof. Red Bull had promise. Mercedes had the benchmark. And once a rival sets that benchmark, the psychological pressure changes. The engineers begin calculating what the car needs to find. The driver starts identifying where the missing time might exist. The team studies whether the deficit comes from the corners, the straights, the tires, or the timing of the lap. But here is the difficult part. Friday practice cannot answer every question. Fuel loads are unknown. Engine settings can differ. Drivers may be testing different setups. One team may focus on a single fast lap, while another prepares for the race. So Red Bull could not simply look at Antonelli's advantage and declare Mercedes unbeatable. But they could not ignore it either. That uncertainty is where desperate strategies are born. Not because the team has no confidence. Because the team cannot be certain that ordinary execution will be enough. And when Max Verstappen is the driver, Red Bull knows one perfect lap can change the entire picture. He had already shown confidence in the car. He described the balance as good from the beginning. Yet even Verstappen had acknowledged that Spa's demand for energy would make the weekend painful. That comment pointed toward a deeper weakness. The new generation of Formula One cars depends heavily on electrical energy as well as fuel. That energy helps power the car, especially when acceleration matters most. At a circuit like Spa, the car spends a long time demanding maximum power. The battery cannot provide unlimited help. So teams have to manage where that electrical boost is used, and where it is saved. Imagine using a phone with a weak battery during a long journey. You can turn the brightness up when you need it. But if you use everything too early, the power disappears before the important moment. For Red Bull, the toe could reduce some of that pressure. If Verstappen faced less air resistance, he could gain speed without asking the car to produce every part of that gain alone. That sounds like the perfect solution. It was not. Because the toe also made Verstappen dependent on circumstances Red Bull could not fully control. Traffic, timing, other drivers. And one small miscalculation could leave him with neither clean air nor useful assistance. That was the trap forming before qualifying. Red Bull had a car that looked competitive. Verstappen had the confidence to attack. But Antonelli had moved the target. Now Red Bull were not merely searching for a strong lap. They were searching for a way to overcome a Mercedes that had transformed overnight, a circuit that punished drag, and an energy demand that Verstappen had already warned about. The toe appeared to offer the missing piece. But the closer Red Bull moved toward that plan, the more their qualifying result depended on everything happening exactly as expected. And at Spa, almost nothing happens exactly as expected. The most dangerous part of Red Bull's plan was not the toe itself. It was the dependence. A toe can make a car faster on the straight, but it also takes control away from the driver. Verstappen could choose his braking point. He could choose how aggressively to attack a corner. He could choose where to take risks. But he could not fully choose what the car ahead would do. And once Red Bull committed to that idea, Verstappen's final qualifying attempt was no longer only about his own execution. It was tied to another moving car. Another driver's speed. Another driver's timing. Another driver's mistakes. That is a dangerous way to decide pole position. Because on paper, the plan sounds simple. Find a car ahead. Stay close enough to gain speed. Use the slipstream on the long flat-out section. Then create enough distance before the corners. But Formula One cars are not standing still. The gap changes every second. If the car ahead accelerates earlier, the toe weakens. If it accelerates later, Verstappen gets too close. If it slows to prepare its own tires, Red Bull's plan begins to collapse. And if the gap is wrong by even a small amount, the benefit can disappear before the fastest part of the lap. That was the risk. Red Bull were trying to control something that could never be completely controlled. And Antonelli's pace made that gamble feel necessary. Mercedes had already shown enough speed to make Red Bull uncomfortable. Antonelli's fastest practice lap had not come at the end of a dramatic final run. It came early, cleanly, and with enough margin to remain unbeaten. That changed the pressure inside qualifying. Verstappen could not simply produce a safe lap and hope it was enough. Red Bull needed every available advantage. The car, the tires, the battery. the track position, and now, the tow. But there was a problem hidden inside that list. The more elements a team needs to make one lap work, the more ways the lap can fail. Think of building a tower from small blocks. One block is easy. 2 blocks are still stable. But when the tower becomes taller, every new piece creates another point of weakness. Red Bull's qualifying plan was becoming that tower. The tow had to work. The tires had to be ready. The traffic had to separate. The battery had to deliver. The final lap had to begin before the clock reached 0. And Verstappen still had to drive perfectly. That is not one challenge. That is several challenges arriving at the same time. And this is where the pressure started to turn into desperation. Not because Red Bull lacked confidence in Verstappen. Because they knew how little margin remained. At a circuit like Spa, one small advantage can decide several positions. A stronger tow can create more speed at the end of the straight. That extra speed can improve the lap time. But the same tow can damage the car's balance when the track changes direction. The air behind another Formula One car is disturbed. It is not smooth. On the straight, that can help. In a fast corner, it can reduce grip. The front of the car can feel lighter. The steering response can become less predictable. And the driver may arrive at the corner carrying more speed than expected. So Verstappen had to use the benefit, then escape the danger. He needed to be close enough to gain time. Then far enough away to trust the car. That distance had to be created in seconds. Too close, and he could lose confidence through the corner. Too far, and the tow had achieved almost nothing. This was not a guaranteed advantage. It was a trade. Straight-line speed in exchange for control. And Red Bull were making that trade because Antonelli had changed the qualifying equation.